What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Tonight is a little bit of a different video. Um, I have been reading The Stand by Stephen King. It's my first Stephen King that I've ever read. I'm not through yet. As you can see, my bookmark has barely scratched the surface of this gigantic doorstop. And that's actually what prompted me to turn the camera on tonight and talk to you. I think I've just been considering what the effect of reading a large book is compared to reading smaller books. Um, I grabbed a couple off the shelf just to use for an example, but you know, read Annihilation a little over a year ago now, I guess, and I have hundreds of books in here that are about this size, but I just grabbed this one, so bear with me. Uh, and so I'm going to talk about the debate between reading big books and reading small books. Big, small. Now, my criteria for this, I guess you could say, I think a small book is generally less than 200 pages. Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer is 195, I believe. And so, that's a relatively short read. I could read that in a couple of sittings probably and just fly through it. It's easy. It gives you a sense of gratification because you finish it. There are some pros to reading short books. There are some cons, but wait just a second. We'll discuss. We'll set up, the argument, I suppose. Large books, I think you could make the case. I guess you could say medium ranged would be anything from like 200 to 400 pages, but anything between like 500 and above, I think you could consider a large book. The Stand, for instance, and forgive this beat up copy that I have. This is my reader, as you can tell. This book is, I'm going to be careful with what I see here in the final pages. It's over 1,100 pages, at least this edition that I have. And this is a massive book. I think this is going to be the biggest book I've ever finished by the time I get done with it. And the reason that I kind of, I guess, wanted to discuss this a little bit between smaller and bigger is most of the stuff I've covered on this channel is between 150 and 350 pages, maybe max. Um, with most being around 200 pages. Sitting here on the shelf, I've covered, I guess I haven't covered that yet, but a recent one that I did on the channel was Pastmaster. This is less than 200 pages. Hair of Its World. Like, this is barely 140 or something, I'm trying to think. Canticle for Leibowitz, I think it was like 220 maybe, something like that. You got a lot of books that are in the category of science fiction, at least, that is most of the stuff, excuse me, most of the stuff that I cover on this channel being short, punchy, exploratory novels that really deal with like one central theme and they just get in and they get out. And that's what I've been used to reading for the past year plus 2 years. Um, when I was a kid, I read a lot of larger books. Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, you know, I gravitated towards these larger books just because I felt cozy in them. And I think that's kind of what I wanted to talk about was what the benefit of such a big book is. I'm about to start chapter 10. I'm about 80 pages into this book so far. And it's slow. Um, Not in a bad way, but its pacing is much different than some of the books that I have encountered in the last year or two. Um, Another book that Luke and I, so Luke and I are both reading The Stand. I should mention that. It's one of the books that we're reading that's a part of kind of this series we're starting, reading some classics that we've never read before. Luke's a huge Stephen King fan, so he wanted to add one of King's best and most well-known books on our list. Another book he wanted to add, Lonesome Dove. I've heard this talked about on several other channels. Thomas's channel, which some of you guys might know. He's in the booktube community. I'll link his channel down below. Um, and Ruby's channel, a couple of booktubers that I really enjoy their content. I'll link them both down below. But I've heard Lonesome Dove mentioned on both of their channels, so we added this really famous western to the list. But as you can see, it is also a enormous book. It's pushing 900 pages in this edition. And I think this whole discussion was kind of came up in my mind because I started to wonder, is this book already dragging? And I'm not even 100 pages into it, but I'm thinking like, there's another 1,000 pages for me to cover, like over 1,000. Like, what what could King have possibly done with the story in this amount of time? And that's naive of me to say because I have enjoyed some massive books before. Lord of the Rings is a slog at times. Wonderful, beautiful writing, but it moves at a snail's pace. Um, you know, I mentioned Harry Potter earlier. Some of the Harry Potter books, Order of the Phoenix, over 800 pages, but I remember it being a very fast read. It's also a YA book. So you could make the case that, I mean, the harder the writing, the shorter a book could potentially be. Uh, there's probably an XY axis of the sweet spot of length of book, but also difficulty of the writing, the reading experience. And King's not a difficult read. I mean, he's so far. Again, I've never read King. It's easier to read. So anyway, I've kind of just thrown a lot of random jumble at you about short and long books, but I really ultimately before you click off this video, down below I'd love to hear your thoughts on what are your pros and cons for short books. Why does a book like Annihilation, under 200 pages, work? Because this is a good book in my opinion. And then why does a book like The Stand work so well at over 1,100 pages? And then give me your reasons why it doesn't. I think it's a little disingenuous to try to compare these two in the way that I'm trying to, because one, I've read this book, I haven't read this book, and they're two totally different genres. Um, but my point, I think, still remains about the length of a book. Does a book is it preference? Does a book get bogged down in its own weight if you just try to do too much with it? I think the answer can be yes, but isn't always yes. So this could just be a very preferential thing. Some people like to just fall into a world like the Wheel of Time and just, you know, sit with these characters for thousands of pages. I don't think I gravitate towards that kind of thing, but that could be you, and you could have some great points as to why you love to do that. Um, I think also that you could make the case that series have a little bit to do with this as well. It could be kind of grouped into this conversation. I'll bring this up because I just read this book not that long ago, but I've read Homeland by R.A. Salvatore. Anyway, I've read this book several times, and I've read the first few books of his Legend of Dritch series, which spans, I think, 13 or 14 books. And, I think the reason I bring that into the discussion is how long can you spend with a certain group of characters or themes before it just gets worn out? Because in that case, I read up to book 5. I'm trying to see the title, Streams of Silver, uh, in the Dritch series, and I just kind of got tired of it. That was a long time ago. It was like 6 or 7 years ago. But point being, you know, if you just like cut a book off in a series and say, "Oh, we're starting a new book," does it change that in terms of series? Like, how does that differ? Um, so I don't know. I'm kind of asking a bunch of questions, and I'm hoping you guys will just kind of we can have a discussion here in this sort of thing, because I don't really have a huge thesis statement for this kind of video, this question. I just more or less was sitting here reading The Stand, and I was just like, I told Luke several times before we started this book, I was like, this book, it's going to be a haul. It's going to be a real long haul for me because I'm not used to books this size. My reading stamina is fine, but I just think I'm going to get disinterested in it. And the closer we got to reading it, we read The Godfather, we read A Farewell to Arms, and we recently finished Dracula. Um, I think all those books being like 300 to 400 pages, I got through those relatively easily, and they weren't like they didn't get tired out. I'm just curious how I'll react to this book because I'm enjoying it so far. I like the setup so far, but I'm just wondering at what point will it start to turn because 80 pages in, that's a decent time investment to where nothing has truly really happened yet. It starts kind of with a bang, but we're still exploring the stuff that came from the very beginning page, 80 pages in. And I'm just like, all right, is it just me? Or are there other people out there who just, you abandon big books because you're just like, I don't have the time or the attention or the energy to give you 1,100 pages. Like you gotta do more for me and in a shorter amount of time, maybe to earn my reading experience. So I don't know if that sounds, you know, I don't know what a book elitist. Then tell me because I just want to have a conversation about this topic, I guess, with you guys. So if you care to drop your comments down below, please let me know what you think about the short versus long book, debate, if you will, and tell me if you've read The Stand. Tell me what you think, because yeah, I know this is not the usual stuff that I cover on the channel, but I'm excited to keep reading this because it gets me out of my comfort zone a little bit. Um, Luke, I've recommended several books to him, like some Silverbergs that he's read, and now it's time for him to return the favor and recommend a book or an author at least that he likes. So anyway, that's kind of what I've been doing. I know I haven't published as much on the channel here recently, but I think I kind of told you guys in the last video, just enjoying some downtime in the holidays here. Um, Reading some bigger books, as you can see, so quite not as much content is going to be put out here. But I'm also I've slowed down on some sci-fi a little bit and given it a breath of fresh air, just taking a second to read some other stuff. And expect the book haul soon because Luke just had a birthday. He and I inevitably went book shopping, and I've ordered some stuff on Whatnot from a couple of my favorite sellers. So um, that's coming soon. Anyway, that's kind of all I had for this video. I appreciate you guys watching as always. I look forward to reading some of your comments and talking to you guys down below. And so with that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.